Welcome to another episode of Books and Bytes.
Today we're diving into a really significant book, Margaret Atwood's The Handmaid's Tale.
It's a classic dystopian novel, isn't it? Set in the Republic of Gilead.
That's right. A totalitarian theocracy that's overthrown the U.S. government. It's quite a chilling setup.
And the story is told through Offred's eyes. She's a handmaid.
Yes. Her purpose, her assigned role, is solely to bear children for the ruling class, the commanders.
What makes it so unsettling, I think, is that Atwood based all the oppressive practices on things that have actually happened in history.
Exactly. Published back in 1985, but it feels incredibly relevant still. Themes of power, gender resistance.
And the fragility of democratic systems, definitely.
So our mission today is to really unpack the key elements of this book for you, give you a clear understanding of its core parts and why it has such a lasting impact.
Right. Let's start at the beginning then. How did Gilead even come about? What was the world like just before?
Well, the book paints a picture of a society already in crisis. There was major environmental catastrophe happening.
Which led to problems with fertility, right?
Less severe fertility crisis, yes. Things like pollution, maybe nuclear accidents, widespread STDs, they all contributed to plummeting birth rates.
You hear terms like unbabies and shredders. It sounds truly grim.
It was. This widespread anxiety and fear about the future, about reproduction, created, well, fertile ground for extremism.
And that's where the Sons of Jacob come in.
Precisely. A radical religious group. They saw this crisis as their moment.
How did they manage to take over? It seems so sudden in the book.
It was swift and brutal. They assassinated the president and most of Congress.
And blamed it on others?
Yes, they blamed Islamic extremists, using it as a pretext to suspend the Constitution, declare a state of emergency.
All under the guise of restoring order.
Exactly. It shows how quickly things can unravel, doesn't it? How vulnerable democratic institutions can be.
And then came the crackdown, especially on women's rights.
Immediately. With the Constitution gone, they moved fast. Women's bank accounts were frozen.
So no financial independence.
None. Property transferred to male relatives. Women fired from their jobs.
And then even basic things like reading and writing were forbidden.
Completely forbidden. Couldn't own property either. It was a total stripping away of autonomy.
How did they justify this? There must have been some kind of rationale given.
Oh, they had one. A very specific theological justification that it twisted the Old Testament.
The story of Jacob, Rachel, and Bilhah.
That's the one. Rachel couldn't conceive, so she gave her handmaid, Bilhah, to Jacob. Gilead took that literal selective interpretation and made it the basis for the handmaid system.
Reducing women purely to reproductive function.
In service of the male elite? Yes. It's a classic tactic, manipulating scripture to fit a political agenda, ignoring all the bits about mercy or justice.
And if you resisted,
the consequences were brutal. Public executions were common, the bodies displayed on the wall.
A very visible warning.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Religious minorities, gay people called gender traitors, political opponents. They're executed or sent to the colonies.
The colonies, those are the toxic waste dumps, right?
Yes, sent there to die slowly from radiation. All while the regime pushed propaganda about purification and restoring fertility. Fear and control.
A key feature of Gilead is this really rigid caste system for women, marked by colors. Can you break that down for us?
Absolutely. It's central to how Gilead functions. Women are stratified by their role and color-coded. At the top, you have the wives.
Dressed in blue.
Right. Married to commanders. They have status, sort of, but still can't read or write or do meaningful work. Serena Joy is the key example.
Offred's Serena Joy. She was a televangelist before Gilead, wasn't she?
Yes. A conservative figure who actually helped build the society that now traps her. The irony is quite stark.
Then there are Akana wives.
The Akana wives, yes. They wear stripes of blue, red, and green. They belong to lower status men and have to fulfill all female roles, wife, servant, potential bearer of children, unlike the specialized households of the elite.
Okay. And the ants. They sound intimidating.
They are, dressed in brown. They're the female enforcers, the indoctrinators. They train the handmaid.
Wielding cattle prods, apparently.
Yes, they have physical means of control. They're granted some authority, even limited literacy, in return for enforcing the regime's ideology. Aunt Lydia is the main one we see.
She seems truly zealous, though maybe with hints of doubt sometimes.
Perhaps. It's complex. Then you have the Marthas.
In dull green. The housekeepers.
Domestic servants, yes. Infertile women. But they have their own network and informal information exchange. Rita and Cora in Offred's house are Marthas.
And finally the handmaids themselves. The center of the story.
In blood red, with those white wings framing their faces. The red symbolizing fertility, maybe menstruation, life, but also danger. The wings restrict their vision, control what they see.
Their sole purpose is reproduction.
Solely. Assigned to a commander for 2 years. If they don't conceive, they get reassigned. 3 failures.
And they become unwomen.
Exactly. The of name, like Offred, shows their possessions. Property of the commander.
What happens to the unwomen?
They're sent to the colonies. Anyone deemed useless or dangerous infertile women, the elderly, feminists, lesbians, nuns, political dissidents, failed handmaids. A death sentence, basically.
And then there's Jezebels, which seems like a massive contradiction.
It's pure hypocrisy. A secret, state-run brothel for commanders and visiting dignitaries.
So the regime publicly preaches purity, but privately.
Indulges in exactly what it condemns. The women there often wear scraps of pre-Gilead clothing, remnants of sexualized outfits. It shows the exploitation beneath the surface.
And men have their hierarchy too, briefly.
Yes, commanders at the top, then angels who are soldiers, guardians like local police, and the eyes, the secret police. Men aren't safe either if they step out of line. It's total control.
Let's focus on Offred's experience. What's her daily life like?
It's incredibly constrained. When the book starts, she's on her 3rd assignment, which implies previous postings didn't result in pregnancy. She lives with Commander Fred, Serena Joy, Rita, and Cora.
Her movements are very restricted.
It's extremely. Limited outings, shopping, always with a partner. Walks to the wall, ceremonial events like prayvaganzas or salvagings.
And the partners are there to monitor each other, aren't they?
Yes. Constant surveillance, even among the handmaids. Deep mistrust is built into the system.
And central to her life is the ceremony. Can you explain that?
It's the monthly fertility ritual. Time to recycle. It starts with the commander, reading from the Bible-specific, chosen passages, of course.
And the act itself.
It's this very formalized, impersonal act of intercourse. Offred lies between Serena Joy's legs, literally positioned between the wife's knees, holding her hands.
While the commander performs his duty.
Right. It's a chilling reenactment, or rather distortion, of that Rachel and Bilhah story, designed to make the child legally the commander's and wife's, avoiding adultery.
It sounds profoundly dehumanizing.
Absolutely. Offred has to detach herself completely, find ways to endure it.
How does she cope with all this? How does she keep any sense of self?
She retreats inward, into memory. She plays word games in her head, recalls details from her past life.
Fantasies, too.
Yes, fantasies of escape, of reunion. And she recites fragments of things. She remembers bits of the Bible, poems, songs, things that are now forbidden. It's a way of holding on to culture, onto herself.
And she mentally composes her story.
Right. Even though she can't write it down, she tells it in her head. She thinks, I tell, therefore you are. It's an act of witness, of resistance, asserting her existence.
These memories are so important. What do we actually learn about her past life?
We learn her real name might be June, that she was college educated, worked in a library.
Had a husband, Luke, and a daughter.
Yes, Luke had been divorced. Their daughter was young, maybe 5 when Gilead took over, and she had a best friend, Moira.
Moira sounds like a force of nature.
Fiercely independent, outspoken, lesbian, a stark contrast to the conformity demanded by Gilead. These memories highlight everything Offred has lost.
And the changes came so fast, she remembers losing her job.
All women were fired. Then their bank accounts, credit cards frozen, all financial power gone overnight.
Making them totally dependent.
Completely. It shows how quickly freedoms can vanish.
They tried to escape, didn't they, to Canada?
They did. A desperate attempt. But they were caught near the border.
What happened then?
It was violent. Offred was separated from Luke. She thinks he was shot. And her daughter was just taken.
That trauma must haunt her constantly.
It does. The memory of her daughter, the uncertainty of what happened to her and Luke, fuels so much of her inner life and her quiet defiance.
After being captured, she ended up in the Red Center.
The Rachel and Leah Re-Education Center. That's where they indoctrinated women into being handmaids.
Run by the aunts like Aunt Lydia.
Yes, it involved intense psychological pressure, forced testifying sessions where they had to confess past sins, group punishments, all designed to break them down and rebuild them in Gilead's image.
Teaching them it was an honor.
An honor, a sacred duty to save humanity. Twisting subjugation into a virtue.
But she saw Moira there.
Yes, a brief reunion. Moira's spirit was still strong even there. And then Moira managed that incredible escape.
Stealing an aunt's uniform.
Yes. It became this symbol of hope, proof that resistance was possible, even if incredibly dangerous.
Alongside this oppressive routine, Offred formed some complicated connections. The commander, for instance.
Yes. He starts summoning her to his office at night.
Yeah.
Secretly. Which is completely against the rules.
They play Scrabble.
Which is hugely subversive, given she's forbidden to read. He gives her things, lotion, old magazines. It seems like he craves some kind of connection beyond the ceremony.
Companionship. Or just power games.
Probably a mix. He eventually takes her to Jezebel's, the brothel. It's clear he enjoys breaking his own regime's rules.
And she finds that Latin phrase in her room.
No late to bastars carborundorum. Scratched in the closet by the previous handmaid. She asks the commander about it.
And he knows what it means.
He translates it. Don't let the bastards grind you down. The fact that he knows it, that he engaged with the previous handmaid similarly.
Yeah.
It suggests a pattern. It's not about Offred specifically.
Then there's Nick, the chauffeur. That relationship starts very differently.
Very differently. It's Serena Joy who pushes them together.
Because she suspects the commander is infertile.
Which is heresy in Gilead. Infertility is always blamed on the woman. Serena wants a baby, so she arranges for Offred to sleep with Nick.
In exchange for what?
A photo of Offred's daughter. A powerful incentive.
But it becomes more than a transaction for Offred, doesn't it?
It does. It becomes a real passionate affair. A space of genuine human connection, touch, desire, things completely absent elsewhere in her life.
But she's unsure about Nick's motives, his loyalties.
Always. Is he an eye? Is he genuinely helping her? Is he just doing his job? That ambiguity adds another layer of tension and risk.
She also connects with the resistance through her shopping partner.
The first Offglen, yes.
Yeah.
She realizes Offglen is part of Mayday, the underground network. They communicate very subtly. Little signs, coded phrases.
Sharing tiny bits of information.
Small acts of defiance. But then Offglen is suddenly replaced.
What happened to her?
Offred learns later that the first Offglen knew the eyes were coming for her. So she hanged herself before they could arrest and interrogate her. A final act of resistance to protect the network.
That leads us towards the climax, the salvaging and the particution.
The particution is particularly horrific. Handmaids collectively executing someone accused of a crime, in this case, rape of a handmaid.
But there's a twist with the new Offglen.
Yes. As the handmaids are supposed to attack the accused man, the new Offglen whispers to Offred that he's actually one of theirs, a Mayday operative.
And Offglen does something.
She kicks him hard, knocking him unconscious or maybe killing him quickly. An act of mercy, preventing a drawn-out, brutal death at the hands of the frenzied handmaids.
Then the black van arrives at the house for Offred.
Yes. Serena Joy has found evidence of Offred's relationship with the commander, maybe the Jezebel's cloak. She's furious.
It seems like the end for Offred.
It does. But as the eyes, or who she thinks are eyes, lead her away, Nick appears.
And whispers something.
Go with them. Trust me. Implying they aren't eyes, but Mayday helping her escape.
So the ending is ambiguous.
Completely. Her final words as she steps into the van. And so I step up into the darkness within, or else the light. We don't know for sure if it's capture or rescue.
But the epilogue, the historical notes, gives us some clues, right? Set far in the future.
Yes, 2195. It's a transcript from an academic conference studying Gilead. We learn Offred's story survived on cassette tapes found in Maine.
On the underground female road. So she did get out initially.
It strongly suggests she escaped Gilead, at least for a time, and was able to record her story.
But the professor discussing the tapes, he seems quite detached.
Professor Piasotto. Yes, he's more interested in verifying historical details, like the commander's identity, than in the human story. He even makes jokes about Gilead's practices.
And criticizes Offred for not being more informative.
Exactly. He complains her account lacks certain kinds of data, overlooking the immense value of her personal testimony. It's quite ironic, mirroring Gilead's own dehumanization in a way.
So the notes confirm Gilead fell eventually.
Yes, that regime didn't last forever. But Offred's ultimate fate, did she find her daughter? Luke. True freedom. That remains unknown.
Atwood leaves it open.
Deliberately ambiguous. There's hope, but no certainty.
Let's talk about the major themes. Power seems absolutely central.
Definitely. You see the obvious power of the state, the patriarchal structure, but it's more complex too. Serena Joy wields power within her sphere. Offred has the power of potential fertility.
And the power of her narrative, her testimony.
Absolutely. The novel shows how power operates through violence, surveillance, language, ritual, but also how power can be resisted or subverted in small ways.
And the link between environmental crisis and reproductive politics feels incredibly current.
It really does. Gilead uses the crisis to impose extremist control over women's bodies. It's a stark warning about how anxieties about the future can be exploited to strip away rights.
Making women into reproductive vessels.
State-controlled reproduction. It connects to pre-Gilead issues of sexualization and control, just taken to an extreme.
Language is another huge theme, how Gilead uses it and how Offred resists.
Gilead creates its own vocabulary. Unwomen, persecution, salvaging to shape reality and control thought. Twisting religious language is key to that.
But Offred fights back internally.
With her wordplay, remembering forbidden texts, and just telling her story, even silently, language is a battlefield. The fragmented style of the novel reflects that disorientation too.
What about complicity and resistance? It's not black and white?
No, it isn't. People adapt to survive. Some, like Aunt Lydia, seem to internalize the ideology, finding justifications freedom to and freedom from, she says.
While others make compromises.
Exactly. And then you have overt resistance like Moira's escape or the Mayday Network. Offred's resistance is often internal psychological. The novel explores that whole spectrum.
And the critique of religious extremism is pointed.
Very. Gilead claims biblical authority, but it's a highly selective, distorted reading used to prop up patriarchal power, ignoring core tenets of compassion or justice found elsewhere in the text. It's about power, not faith.
Finally, memory and identity. How crucial are they for Offred?
Memory is everything. It's how she holds on to who she was before Gilead tried to erase her identity, clinging to memories of Luke, her daughter, Moira, her own name, that's survival.
Even though memory can be fragmented, unreliable.
Yes, the novel shows that too. But the act of remembering and the act of testifying through her narrative is vital. The historical notes, despite the professor's attitude, confirm the importance of that testimony surviving.
So, The Handmaid's Tale, written in 85, it's more than just a story.
It's a literary masterpiece, certainly, but also a profound political warning. And as you said, Atwood grounded it in historical reality, which gives it enduring power.
Its relevance seems only to have grown, sadly. Environmental concerns, religious fundamentalism, debates over reproductive rights, surveillance.
All these issues keep bringing the book back into focus. You see, the handmade costume used in protests worldwide, that's an incredible reach.
The TV series has also brought it to a new, huge audience.
And phrases from the book have entered the language. Its literary achievement, the prose, the structure, the voice, is undeniable.
And that ambiguous ending.
It reflects the uncertain reality of fighting oppression. But the fact that Offred's story survives, that her voice wasn't silenced, that offers a powerful sense of resilience. Her testimony is the ultimate repudiation of Gilead.
It's a deeply affecting and thought-provoking book. We've really only scratched the surface here.
Absolutely. There's so much depth to explore.
So to explore this profound story further, definitely grab a copy of The Handmaid's Tale. You can find a link in the description.
And be sure to subscribe to Books and Bytes for more deep dives into impactful literature like this one.
As a final thought to leave you with, consider which aspects of Gilead, maybe even small ones, feel most resonant or concerning in our world today.
And perhaps what forms of resistance, large or small, might be most meaningful against those kinds of forces. It's something the book really compels you to think about.